I really can't describe how much I love Oblivion. The majestic landscapes, the serene music, the intricate and exciting quests. It is a timeless masterpiece. It's also an incredibly goofy game with potato faces, broken level scaling, and countless glitches and exploits that haven't been fixed to this day. One of my favorite glitches involves a staff named the Skull of Corruption. It's a Daedric artifact that can create an evil clone of any NPC. The clone is always hostile and dies after 30 seconds, but following an elaborate series of steps, you can make a clone of your character that is permanent. Your clone has of course the same stats, equipment, abilities, and faction affiliations as you, but at the end of the day, it's just another generic NPC with no special behaviors. Or is it? Could such an NPC gain sentience through the Gamebryo engine's barely functioning code and Todd Howard's dark magic? This is the story of Nickies, a fellow Oblivion enjoyer who decided to do the Skull of Corruption glitch, but the results were beyond his expectations. He posted his findings on 4chan's video game board, and the anonymous hacker known as 4chan did what he does best. Derailed the thread into oblivion, no pun intended. The thread took a life on its own and evolved into a legendary copypasta that for a while was an inseparable part of the board's culture. It was crazy to say the least. People were impersonating Nickies, spamming their versions of the original story, and it was impossible to piece together a proper narrative. And the even more insane part? That was just a small part of his Oblivion legacy. So sit back, relax, order some pizza as it will be relevant to the story later on, and enjoy the trip down the rabbit hole that is Nickies. It all started back in 2017 with a thread on V named Creepy RPG Happenings. The OP's image was that of a character lying dead in the middle of the Imperial Council in Oblivion. The post itself went like this. Anyone else have strange things happen on their favorite RPG games? Here's something that happened on my main Oblivion save once. It's a long read, but I think it's worth it. So, in Oblivion, there is an item called the Skull of Corruption, which you can use to clone NPCs. Using a glitch, you can use it to permanently clone yourself. When I discovered this glitch online, I had already played Oblivion to exhaustion. My character, Nickies, a Breton battlemage, was nigh invulnerable and had spells that could one-hit minotaurs. It was pretty crazy, but it got boring fast. I decided the only challenge left was to fight a version of myself, a permanent clone, a Nickies Black if you will. So I did the glitch purposefully not wearing my best gear as to make sure I can still win, but couldn't immediately kill the clone because my healing spells were too potent. So I left and returned to see what would happen to him. He had changed his equipment loadout to that of my own real characters, including all my OP shit. Now I actually couldn't kill him. Not only that, but he started upchucking a creepy mix of faction dialogue I haven't heard before, like "I'm sworn to die, are you?" and "The training of thousands has passed through me." Sometimes he would use my invisibility spells and flee, and I'd have to find him again. One time I found an entire town murdered with him nearby. I even got bounties when I swore I didn't commit any crimes. Once I led him over a bayou to an underwater DLC home I had, and he equipped my water walking boots to easily keep pace. Then, when I fled underwater, he swam under with me despite wearing said boots. Other oddities include his luck seemingly being higher for everything he did compared to my own, and being able to summon two things at once, which was actually impossible in Oblivion. Eventually, our endless fight led into the Imperial City, the capital. The very next post was the continuation of the story, and it went like this. With the entire fucking garrison of the Imperial City, I managed to kill the bastard. I moved him onto the table in the center of the Capitol building for all to see. Half the city was murdered as a side effect, but hey, it worked. Just a week ago, I tried to glitch again. When I almost killed the clone on my first try this time, he shouted, "Why, brother, why?" I hesitated to finish him, but he then cloaked and ran off somewhere. When I found him, he was in my best shit again. The bastard is able to trick me, and he can switch gear whenever he seems to feel like it. For example, in Oblivion, NPCs always wear the first thing in their inventory. In my and the clone's case, this is a cursed hood I named AAAAA, specifically to kill NPCs with, by planting it in their inventory. However, the clone refuses to put it on, instead somehow specifically choosing either my best headwear or whatever matches the set he's wearing at that time. It just boggles my mind. Of course, since this is 4chan we're talking about, Nickies' story was met with disbelief and ridicule, as many were asking for proof of OP's adventures. Something happened then that rarely ever does on the internet. The OP posted proof. It was a link to his Xbox Clips account called the Jinja Baker. Various clips were available from a variety of different games like Halo, Rainbow Six and Skyrim, but the ones from Oblivion were the most interesting as they showcased that what Nickies said was true. He indeed had created a corrupted clone with game-breaking powers, able to summon two creatures at once, change armor at will, and use tactics that no other NPC was capable of. And the craziest thing of them all was that it was on Xbox One. Therefore, no console commands or mods could have been used to achieve such a result. What an incredible discovery! It's almost like a creepypasta or an urban legend, but actually real. But once again, this is 4chan we're talking about here. So what did the rest of the posters do? They continued not believing him, ridiculing his story and his proof. But among all the shitposting, something strange happened. People started impersonating Nickies, trolling other users, reposting the OP with different wording or as a different character, being rude, and accusing each other of being imposters. The story itself slowly faded into the background as the thread became a chaotic hellscape of Nickies' clones talking to each other and mindlessly parroting the same shit over and over, until the thread's underwhelming demise, with the last posts being a rendition of a story by Jar Jar Binks. Fascinating. But this wasn't the end of Nickies' threads. Oh no, that was just the beginning. After the initial thread opened Pandora's box, there was a slew of imposters copying the original thread's post, to the point where the name Nickies became a meme within the VBoard community. As for the story itself, it became your standard copypasta to spam across a board and annoy users not in the know. It cannot be understated how many Nickies threads were at the time. I even found a copycat thread on the archive made in 2023. The legacy of Nickies and his clone is truly timeless. There's something we overlooked though. The first clone was an overpowered beast, able to pull off stunts beyond Oblivion's programming, and it took the entire Imperial City and Nickies himself to bring him down. But there was a second clone created after the first one's death. Not only was he equally powerful, but he could use advanced tactics and even appeal to Nickies' feelings, making him guilty enough to prevent him from dealing the final blow, so he could escape. So whatever happened to him? Trying to find more information about the second clone and piece it together in a way that would make sense proved to be a task far more complex than I anticipated. The 4chan archives were vast, with pages upon pages of posts made by Nickies and his impersonators. He never used a trip code when posting either, making investigations even harder. A trip code, by the way, is a unique identifier that posters on 4chan can use to identify themselves over other anonymous users. Combined with the fact that there were several posts and threads made on the paranormal board as well, verifying the source of each post would be technically impossible. However, I managed to find a thread on RPG Codex, detailing the adventures Nickies had with his corrupted clone. Whether or not this story came from Nickies himself is unknown, at least to me, but it seems to line up fairly well with the Xbox One clips provided by the 4chan thread. Unfortunately, many of the old clips are now gone, but thankfully they are up on YouTube, and you can still find the newer ones on Jija Baker's account. So, without any further delays, this is the fascinating story of the second Nickies Black. Okay, so last time on my Oblivion save, I left off with a clone nicknamed Nickies Black going missing. He used my full health restore plus buff willpower 100 plus invisibility spell and then promptly vanished. I couldn't find him anywhere. My main worry at this point was that he equipped my Ring of Kaziri, which would cloak him with something like 15% chameleon. This would basically require me to have Detect Life active at all times to stand a chance at finding him. Unfortunately, mysticism was always the one school I neglected, and so my main method of getting Detect Life was donning the Grey Cowl of Nocturnal and going around as the Grey Fox. I loaded a few previous saves just to see where he's likely to run to if prompted. They all showed him running south to the Roxy Inn, which he always cleaned out mercilessly by the way. The mercenaries or whatever they are inside would often try to run down the road only to get blasted in the back with a monstrously damaging spell. However, after looking around that area with a grey cowl on, having to avoid a few Legion soldiers as I did, I just couldn't find him. I gave up. For the next day or so, I just did regular stuff, including coming up with whatever useful spells I could think of just in case I found him. Of course, I never actually found him. No, instead, I heard combat music suddenly during a journey from Cloud Ruler Temple to Bruma. When I arrived at the city, I waited around, and lo and behold, here comes Nickies Black, ready to stab me to bits with my own damn weaponry. Only something wasn't right this time. He took off the shrouded hood and replaced it with the helm of a crusader. Now curious, I fled and returned, which I found often calms him down, and found him near the city walls. Further observation saw him slowly shifting from Dark Brotherhood armor to the crusader set. It should be noted that I don't believe the DB gear was broken enough to warrant a switch based on durability, but more evidence for this will come later. As was my natural inclination, I decided that perhaps this second experiment had gone too far and tried to kill him, but he had put on the better examples of my enchanted jewelry. For the first time in his second incarnation's life, he was totally new to magic and reflected much of my physical attacks. Following the last of those battles outside of Bruma, he fell out of my sight once more. I found him to the southwest in full Crusader armor for the first time. What was puzzling is that his personality almost seemed to change with his equipment. For the first time ever, Nickies Black greeted me with at least passive friendliness. "How are you?" and not utter contempt. "Is it necessary that you speak to me?" I didn't let it affect my resolve. The clone was too dangerous to be left alive. We fought, and the battle led us back to Bruma proper. I pity that city. As we approached, I found to my great confusion that I had the 2000 gold bounty on my head. To clarify, I had certainly seen the clone kill somewhere between 4 and 8 guards by this point, but I hadn't killed anyone, I swear. I hadn't even assaulted anyone except for the clone, and I had long since ditched the Grey Cowl. I can't explain why I had the bounty, but I did. Whether or not it was the game attributing the clone's crimes to me, I don't easily buy into, but I can't think of another explanation. So what followed was a freeway brawl between me, Nickies Black, and the Bruma City Guard. Unfortunately for the guards, Black and I were content to hammer each other with area of effect spells that did not affect us at all, but one hit the guards, as soon as a bunch of them would swarm around one of us. For a moment we even teamed up against a swarm of guards near one of the city's gates, but the alliance, while fun and supremely powerful, didn't last long. Even worse, Black was in a rage at this point. He would often attack any civilian he saw and only pause to fight me if provoked. I'm not sure how many people are even still alive in Bruma now, but before I led him out of the city, I looked on my statue with true guilt. As you may have noticed, he switched to a quartz cuirass, enchanted glass with powerful resist normal weapon stats during this time. However, again, I don't think this was due to durability. He would often switch between the quartz cuirass and my custom enchanted perfect amber gear during the ravaging of Bruma. Beyond that, he was apparently able to summon 2 liches at once, despite that being, physically impossible in the game's mechanics. I resolved to bring him to Cloud Ruler Temple, where I hoped either the blades would kill him or he'd get stuck. I led him there, watched for a bit, and ran as soon as I saw what was happening. I returned to find the blades all dead, the door wide open, and Black nowhere to be found. Loading alternate saves allowed me to find him cloaked inside the temple, back in his full Crusader gear. This is my main evidence for the not due to durability theory, or as far as the road to Coral, wearing Imperial Dragon armor and Sio Gorov's regalia at that time, and cloaked with the Ring of Kaziri. Further investigation in the main saves showed he isn't there, however. Once again, he has gone missing. I fear for anything he comes across at this point. I do want to mention a few key things. Firstly, he seems to have ditched the faction-specific dialogue in favor of generally evil lines. However, he still equips gear in sets, that is, he'll go from full shrouded gear to full Crusader gear to full amber to full glass, and so on and so forth. Eventually, I do think he'll start switching to the Imperial Dragon gear and the non-armor robes and clothes I keep on me, as he did in the other saves. But I don't understand how he displays such autonomy with his equipment loadout. I've seen him switch between glass and amber in the middle of combat, not to mention he still refuses to put on the 5A hood that'll kill him. There are undoubtedly still more mysteries to unravel with this clone. After over an hour of searching, I located the clone just off the northernmost road to Coral, which I must say is an impressive distance. I immediately pressed my advantage, pushing him farther and farther south. At one point he pulled our fight east, but trying to keep it away from Coral, pulled it west. At first my plan to keep our fight in the wilderness was working, until the Black Horse courier rode by. Nickies Black chased the courier over half of the distance to Coral. I caught up easily, but he had still healed himself of most of the battle's damage by then. Unfortunately, a grim realization hit me. The only way I'd been in black the first time was through using a city's garrison to help me, and on maximum difficulty, so the guards hit 6 times harder. If I were to have any hope of beating him again, a city would once more be required. Not wasting any more time, I guiltily led Black into Coral. To avoid incurring any bounties, I entered the city under the guise of a grey fox and started fighting my clone there. Despite the guards' initial hostilities, using a clever combination of invisibility and provoking Black, I was able to turn them on him. It was in vain. Black used summons and my own area of effect spells to make quick work of them. Humorously, the Battlehorn Castle soldier I had brought with me didn't even make an effort to help me. He fought against things that attacked me or Black, but never interfered in our actual one-on-one. They too didn't last long, as Black's summons and my own quickly picked them off. My own sympathies for civilian casualties have waned significantly since Bruma. The clone has to die, and I have to pile on as many attackers on him at once until he does. When the townspeople and the guards were all slaughtered, I finally had Black on critically low health. Even on maximum difficulty, I was able to keep pace using self-buffing spells, which I lovingly nicknamed Super Saiyan, to match him hit for hit, and I was a bit smarter with using my healing than he was. Even better, I knocked him down with a backwards power attack, just as he tried to heal. When I started hammering away at him, however, my spells expired. My fatigue fell into the negatives, and I collapsed face first at Black's feet. He got up before I could, hit me a few times, then thought better of it and fled, healing himself as he did. When I got up, he was gone again, although this time I was able to find him rather quickly. He was just outside the north gate of Coral. The chameleon he'd used in the city, courtesy of a ring of Kaziri, was still on him, so I had to remain as the Grey Fox in order to find him. When I did, it seemed as though he had settled into an outfit consisting of Siogorav's regalia and a dark green robe hood. Most strangely, for the very first time, he was using normal NPC dialogue. Gone were his usual, "Is it necessary that you speak to me?" and "I don't like you, go away," replaced with pleasant lines like "Hail" and "How are you doing today?" Not to mention those compliments on my skills and attributes that NPCs often give. Looking back on the destruction I just created in Coral, I knew attacking him again at that time was pointless. I can only really beat him if I have significant friendly support. I hate to say it, but city after city will have to help me no matter the cost. Nickies Black is a threat too dangerous to be left alive. For the first time and the last time, this story actually begins with me knowing exactly where Nickies Black, the corrupted clone of my endgame fully optimized Oblivion character, is. He was right outside of Coral. I didn't even bother attacking him outright. We fought countless times, and it's only proven that we're seemingly incapable of killing each other. Bruma and Coral had already been ransacked in my attempts to get city guards to help me kill him, with no success. I reasoned that it was pointless to keep throwing smaller cities' garrisons at him. I'd have to take him back to the Imperial City, where the first clone had died before him. So I led him back to the capital, attacking him as I did to try and soften him up for the guards. When we arrived, the first wave of guards took down a fair bit of his health, but couldn't quite get past the barrier represented by the threshold of health past which he healed himself. I had no choice but to lead him further into the city. Rather hauntingly, the bodies from that first battle with the original Nickies Black were still there. We passed through the palace district, but this time I wasn't keen to lead him back into the palace. I realized I'd probably get more guards to help me if I kept leading him through more parts of the city. In the arena district, with over a dozen guards down, we finally started to get him down to critically low health levels. I incurred a bounty due to some friendly fire at this point, but I was too close to victory to let up. Then he ran. He used that rest spell I had and ran away while invisible. I tracked him down throughout the district, and then when he reappeared, he started running throughout the entire city. We ended up back in the arena district anyway. Most of the guards were dead by this point. I was using all the buff spells I had, but we were still evenly matched. I could get his health down while the spells were up, but if I wasn't careful when they ran out, I'd collapse from exhaustion. We fought for a while there. Eventually, however, he turned and entered the market district. I followed him. On the other side were more guards ready to fight both of us apparently. I guess my bounty was high enough for them to attack us both by then. Only something was off. Their attacks weren't doing anything. In fact, they were dropping dead from their own strikes. As it turns out, Black had finally started to fully optimize my gear. Truth is, I technically always had the items necessary for 100% damage reflection, but I purposely never used them. I felt it made the game incredibly boring, and I liked getting spell absorption instead anyway. It allowed me to kill magic users faster. Apparently, Nickies Black had no such qualms with using 100% reflect damage and had started doing so. This was a huge problem for me. The only skills I knew of that could bypass 100% reflect damage and his existing 100% resist magic were marksman and alchemy via poisons. I was only level 30s in either. My character was a battle mage through and through, and the city guards' arrows were nearly enough to kill Black on their own. Even worse, he started using some of my buff super saiyan spells for the first time ever. He was matching my enhanced damage output now. This was truly the strongest Nickies Black has ever been. With Black now invulnerable to most forms of damage, I threw out my own reservation for using 100% reflect. I had to match him. By this time the guards became more of a nuisance. It seems Black shared my thoughts because he stopped fighting me and we started fighting the guards together. Actually, our begrudging alliance was quite a bit of fun. One time as we were mopping up the last few guards, I hit him by accident and he growled, "Hit me once more and I'll kill you." When the guards died, he naturally turned on me again. However, for some reason, he had temporarily taken off some of his gear. I had the idea that perhaps his magic resistance was no longer 100%, but after trying many offensive spells, it was. As you can see in the previous clip, I tried a command humanoid spell, and after several attempts, I actually got it to work. Now I could lead him anywhere I wanted, but where should I? Where was a place where I could kill this clone once and for all? With the game paused, I thought about everything that could kill someone with 100% damage resistance and immunity to offensive spells. I had already considered marksman and alchemy, but I realized I had actually left two things out: fall damage and physical traps. I tried throwing Black off of Dive Rock once before, but somehow he lived, so that was out of the question. That left physical traps as my modus operandi. But what traps were deadly enough to kill a Nickies? I needed something that was a one-hit kill, no matter what. Then it hit me. There was such a thing. There was a void in Arkved's Tower, the dungeon involved in Vermina's Deadly quest, the very same quest that gave me the Skull of Corruption. I was going to end this where it began. I quickly led Nickies Black out of the Imperial City, towards the dungeon where our final battle would be had. Along the way, I noticed some peculiarities in his behavior. He ditched his nice NPC demeanor, instead adopting his "I don't want to talk to you" lines again whenever I got closer to him. Also, he was hostile to anything and everything, except for me again, for the first time since his creation. If he detected so much as a single deer, he hunted it down and ended it. This wouldn't be so much of a problem if he hadn't learned how to use my plus 100 speed spells in these hunts. He made my progress towards Arkved's Tower painfully slow, but I still managed to get us somewhat close. Unfortunately for me, there were a ton of deer and other creatures in the area. He went berserk. In fact, I lost track of him entirely at one point. Lucky me, now I had to track him down again. Even better, when I finally did find him, Command Humanoid didn't work anymore. I guess he changed his loadout slightly again, but he still did have 100% damage reflection. Fantastic. Well, at least we were pretty close to the tower by that point, so it wasn't too hard to lead him the rest of the way by attacking him. We went in through the trap door that you usually leave through, to save ourselves the effort of going through the entire dungeon. It was a fittingly morbid place for our final battle. It was fittingly strange as well. At long last we reached the bridge over the endless void. I used my strongest buff spells and was extremely careful not to let them dangerously deplete. This was no longer a battle of pure damage, but now a king of the hill ring-out match to the death. I managed to push him off first. My heart jumped for a second. But he appeared back at the doorway seconds later. Was I wrong? Did the void not kill people instantly after all? I didn't think that was the case. He pushed me further back on the bridge and hit me off of it. When I hit the bottom, I died instantly. Unlike what you may think, I was happy to have died. It meant that I now knew how the void worked. You had to be far out on the bridge when you fell in order for it to kill you. I suppose it's unfair to say that I didn't lose that fight right then and there, since he technically hit me off first, but I had an unfair advantage of reloading saves. If you'd rather view this as him having won, that's probably a valid interpretation. Regardless, I reloaded and entered the bridge with Black once more. I led him out as far as I dared. We fought for minutes, trying to position ourselves better than the other fighter. Finally, he stepped a little bit too much to the side. I power attacked and hit him off the bridge. Immediately, I listened to the combat music, trying to gauge if he'd come back or not. It stopped. Peaceful exploration music immediately took its place. Nickies Black was gone. He was thrown into the void forever. It was over. I sheathed my sword and exited the dungeon. The game's world seemed peaceful for the first time in weeks. I was free of having to worry about a corrupted clone of myself. Contented, I made my way back to my throne in the Shivering Isles, sat down, saved the game, and exited. And that concludes the tale of Nickies Black. But we're not done yet, not even close. You see, Nickies really loves Oblivion to a concerning degree. As a result, he dedicated his YouTube channel to documenting interesting findings from the game and bizarre experiments to its world and inhabitants, like a new Dr. Frankenstein. One of his very first experiments of such nature were with Oblivion's timescale and general day-night cycle handling. These can get pretty intense if you are prone to flashing lights or seizures, but they did lead to one of the game's most impressive graphical glitches, where every landscape, model, and character has bizarre colors and textures, turning them into beautifully surreal, abstract paintings. Some amazing wallpaper potential there. Like every Oblivion player with access to the spell-making altar, Nickies also experimented with his character's speed limits. And he went all the way, making himself faster than sound, faster than a speeding bullet, and even faster than light itself. Eventually, he became so fast that the game would crash before his character actually moved. Crazy stuff, but not as crazy as his experiments with the game's citizens. He tortured the poor NPCs to no end. It started simple enough, creating a mod that would let an NPC replicate itself and then independently travel across Cyrodiil, successfully infecting and converting the NPCs of every major city and town to their kind, eventually expanding the concept to include evolutions for viral clones who survive long enough, as well as another opposing clone faction, disinfection doctors, anti-clone crusaders, and more. Yeah, not really that simple, is it? But by far the most interesting experiments were the character fusions. Nickies would merge every NPC from Morrowind, Oblivion, or Skyrim into a single entity, with all of their stats combined, creating godlike monstrosities that would fight other NPCs or merged entities, using each game's engine. If you find that concept interesting, there are tons of videos for you to dig in, it's a lot of fun. But besides all the NPC experiments, gang wars, clone infections, and fusions, my personal favorites are the videos where Nickies tests the limits of Oblivion's engine with the most bizarre ideas you can think of. Moving in stop time and having a conversation with his very soul, permanently erasing NPCs or storing them in a book, transferring items, spells, and even characters from one Elder Scrolls game to another, even exploring the void past Oblivion's playable map, which by the way is infinitely larger than our universe. Absolute insanity! I'm gonna need a bite after all that. Well, how about ordering a pizza from an Oblivion NPC? Yep, You heard me right. Nickies has made a mod whereby interacting with a specific Oblivion script extender plugin and the Domino's API, you can order pizza from the game itself. And it just works, but only for the US, the UK and Canada. Nickies' Pizza Oblivion mod became a viral hit within the community, with several articles and videos made about it. And thank God for that, because Nickies is one of the most creative and inventive modders I have ever seen, and his vast knowledge of the game's inner workings is truly a sight to behold. Whether the story of Nickies Black is real or not doesn't matter, because the rest of his escapades are equally unique and exciting. It's been a while since the last Nickies thread and video. Hopefully that will change soon. The world needs more Oblivion deep dives, and it needs them now. But until then, that's all I had to say about the legendary tale of Nickies. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stuff. You know how it goes. You can also support me on Patreon or become a channel member for early access to my videos and other perks. Have a great day, and until next time, take care and have fun.